My late husband bought a house for us to live out our old age in peace, side by side. But when he passed away, my own daughter showed up with her husband, saying, "Get out of here. This is all mine. Consider it my inheritance." I looked her in the eye and said nothing, but that very night, she learned the worst lesson of her life. My name is Eleanor. I am 68 years old, and I have just buried the love of my life. Arthur was everything to me. We had been together for 42 years, building dreams, weathering storms, loving each other even when distance separated us. He worked overseas for 20 years to give us a better life. 20 years during which I raised our daughter, Chloe, all by myself. 20 years where I stretched myself thin, being both mother and father at the same time. When Arthur finally returned, we bought this house. A beautiful house with a yard, 3 bedrooms, a big kitchen. He used to tell me it was our sanctuary to grow old together, side by side. He promised me we would spend our last happy days here. I believed him with every fiber of my being. But Arthur got sick, pancreatic cancer. In 6 months, he went from a strong man to a fragile shadow. I took care of him every second. I gave him his medicine, bathed him, fed him when the pain was unbearable. Chloe came to visit him twice in 6 months, always in a hurry, always with excuses. Always accompanied by Cameron, her husband, a man with a fake smile and calculating eyes. The funeral was yesterday. I came home exhausted, my heart shattered. I just wanted to lie down in the bed I had shared with Arthur and cry in peace. But when I arrived, Chloe's car was parked out front, and there was a moving truck. I walked in, confused. Chloe was in the living room with Cameron. They had boxes in their hands, looking over the furniture, the paintings, the decorations, like they were taking inventory, as if Arthur hadn't died just 24 hours ago. "Chloe, what are you doing?" She didn't even look at me. "Organizing. There's a lot to do." "Organize what?" Cameron set a box on the floor. "Eleanor, it's better if you sit down. We need to talk about important things. I don't want to talk right now. I just buried my husband." "Unfortunately, we can't wait," Chloe said curtly. "This house, Dad's assets, everything has to be settled quickly." I felt the floor move beneath my feet. "Settled? Chloe, your father just died." "I know, Mom, but we've been looking at the financial situation, and we need to act. Dad left debts. The medical treatments cost a fortune. I will take care of it. This is my house." Cameron let out a laugh. "With what money are you going to keep this house, Eleanor? Do you have an income, a pension, savings?" "I have what Arthur left me." "Technically," Chloe intervened, "this house is part of the estate, and I am the only child. Half of it belongs to me. Your father bought this house for me to live in. He's gone, and you can't afford a house this size on your own. It doesn't make sense." "It doesn't make sense? This is my home." Cameron stepped closer. "You have to be realistic. This house is worth money. If we sell it, we split the profits. You can rent something smaller, something that fits your situation. My situation is that I've just been widowed." "That's why we're here," Chloe said. "To help you make smart decisions. I don't need your help. I need you to leave." Chloe's face hardened. "We're not leaving. This house is going to be sold, with or without your cooperation. You can't do that. This house is in my name." Cameron and Chloe exchanged a look that chilled my blood. "We'll see about that," Cameron said. "We have a lawyer reviewing the documents. We'll find a way." "Is that what you call stealing my house?" "We're not stealing anything," Chloe answered. "We're claiming what's ours. Dad worked his whole life. I have a right too. You had everything. College, a car, the down payment on your condo. What more do you want?" "I want what is legally mine." I sank onto the sofa. I couldn't take it anymore. "Your father isn't even cold in his grave." "I'm not fighting, Mom. I'm being practical. Someone has to be." Cameron sat down, too close. "We'll give you a few days to think about it. But the decision is already made. This house is selling. You can make this easy, or you can make this hard. You decide. Get out of my house." "It's our house," Chloe corrected. "Get used to the idea." The next day, they returned. They knocked on the door at 8 o'clock in the morning. I had barely slept. my eyes swollen from crying. I opened it, and there they were, with more boxes, with a property appraiser. "Good morning, Mom. This is Mr. Johnson. He's going to appraise the house." "Appraise? You haven't wasted any time." "Time is money, Eleanor," Cameron said, walking in without permission. The appraiser began walking through the house, taking photos, measuring spaces, making notes. Chloe followed him as if she were the owner. Cameron reviewed papers at the dining room table. "This property could easily sell for $300,000, the appraiser said. "It's in an excellent location." "Perfect," Chloe replied. "That gives us $150,000 each. I am not selling." "Mom, don't be stubborn. $150,000 is a lot of money. You can rent a nice place and have enough left over to live on for years." "I don't want to rent, I want my house." Cameron closed the folder he was holding. "Eleanor, let's be honest. You have no way to maintain this place. You don't work, you don't have a pension, you have nothing. What are you going to live on? Arthur left me savings." "How much? $10,000? $20,000? That'll be gone in a year with the expenses of this house." "That's not your problem." "Yes, it is our problem," Chloe said, raising her voice. "Because when you run out of money, you're going to come asking us for help, and we won't be able to give it to you because Cameron and I have expenses too. I have never asked you for anything, but you will. And we'd rather solve this now than wait for you to end up on the street." The appraiser cleared his throat. "Uncomfortable. Well, I'm finished here. I'll send you the full report tomorrow." When he left, Chloe stood in front of me. "Listen to me closely, Mom. This is not negotiable. We are going to sell this house. If you cooperate, everything will be easier. If you don't cooperate, we will find a legal way to do it anyway. You decide if you want to get out of this with dignity or by fighting." "Dignity? You talk to me about dignity when you want to throw me out of my own home? I'm offering you a fair solution. Fair would be respecting your father's wishes. My father's wish was for me to be okay, and to be okay, I need my part of the inheritance." Cameron stood up. "Eleanor, sign the papers, sell the house. Take your money and find something more appropriate for you. Don't complicate things. Get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow with the lawyer," Chloe said. "And you'd better have come to your senses by then." They left me trembling with rage and helplessness. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the walls Arthur and I had painted together, the dishes we had bought together, the table where we had eaten breakfast 1,000 mornings. Everything was full of him, and now they wanted to snatch it away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, touching every object, every memory. I stopped in front of our wedding photograph. Arthur was smiling in that gray suit he loved so much. I was wearing a simple white lace dress. We were so young, so full of dreams. We never imagined we would end up like this, that our own daughter would try to destroy everything we had built. I opened the drawer of Arthur's desk. All his important documents were there. He kept them in perfectly organized folders. He was always meticulous about that. I started going through them, one by one. Invoices, receipts, certificates. And then I found something. A thick folder with a label that said House, Legal Documents. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were the deeds, payment records, certificates, and a letter. A letter in Arthur's own handwriting, addressed to me. It began, "My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, it's because I'm no longer with you. Forgive me for leaving you alone, but I want you to know that I thought of everything to protect you." My eyes filled with tears as I kept reading. Arthur had left everything perfectly arranged. The house was entirely in my name. He had put it solely in my name from the very beginning. There was no inheritance to divide. There was nothing Chloe could claim. Furthermore, he had left clear instructions with his lawyer. If anyone tried to take the house from me, there would be immediate legal consequences. But that wasn't all. Arthur had also left money, a considerable amount in a savings account that only I could touch, and a life insurance policy for $200,000, all in my name, all to ensure that I would be okay. I closed the folder and hugged it to my chest. Arthur had protected me, even from the grave. He knew, somehow, that this might happen, and he made sure I had the weapons I needed to defend myself. The next morning they arrived early. It was 9 o'clock when I heard the knocking on the door. Chloe, Cameron, and a man I didn't know. A guy in an expensive suit with a leather briefcase. "Good morning, Mom. This is Mr. Pierce, our lawyer." The man extended his hand. I didn't take it. "Mrs. Eleanor, a pleasure. I'm here to explain the legal situation of the property." "There's nothing to explain. This house is mine." "Well, that's precisely what we need to clarify," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Your husband passed away without a clear will regarding the distribution of assets. That means everything goes into probate. My husband left everything very clear." Cameron let out a mocking laugh. "Clear? Eleanor, you have no idea how these things work. That's why we brought the lawyer." The lawyer pulled some documents from his briefcase. "Look, ma'am. The law states that community property acquired during the marriage is divided between the spouse and children. This house was bought during your marriage, therefore it is community property. This house is in my name." "That doesn't matter," Chloe interjected. "If it was bought during the marriage, it belongs to both. And as the only child, I am entitled to half of what was Dad's." "You don't know what you're talking about. The ones who don't know are you," the lawyer said condescendingly. "I have reviewed similar cases, and believe me, this always ends the same way. Equitable division of assets." Cameron crossed his arms. "So, what's it going to be, Eleanor? Are we going to court where you'll spend what little you have on lawyers? Or do you accept the deal we're offering and we all come out ahead?" "What deal?" Chloe smiled, that fake smile she had perfected over the years. "Very simple. You sell the house, you keep $120,000. I get $180,000. It's fair, considering I'm younger and have more expenses." "Fair? You want to steal $60,000 from me and you call it fair? It's not theft, Mom. It's compensation. I'll take care of you when you're older. I need that extra money to be able to do it." "I don't need you to take care of me. I need you to leave me alone." The lawyer put his papers away. "Mrs. Eleanor, I recommend you think about it. If this goes to court, the legal fees could eat up a large part of the property's value. Nobody wins in those cases, except lawyers like you. I'm just trying to help this family resolve their problems in a civilized manner." "Civilized?" I raised my voice. "You call coming to my house the day after my husband's funeral to demand I leave civilized?" "No one is demanding anything," Chloe said. "We're giving you options. The only option I want is for you to get out of my house and not come back." Cameron took a step toward me. His presence was threatening. "Watch what you say, Eleanor. We can do this the easy way, or we can make this very difficult for you. You choose. Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. If you don't cooperate, we can prove you're not in a condition to maintain this property, that you have no financial capacity, that you need help. I am perfectly fine." "Yes," Chloe looked me up and down. "You sure don't look it. Look at how you're dressed. Look at your hair. You haven't even showered since yesterday. You think that's how you'll convince a judge you can live alone?" I felt my cheeks burn. She was right. I was still in the same clothes from the day before. I hadn't brushed my hair. I had barely eaten, but it was because I was in mourning. Because my husband had just died. "I am in mourning." "You're neglectful," Cameron corrected, "and that's exactly what a judge will see. An elderly woman, without resources, incapable of caring for herself. It will be very easy to argue that you need to be put in a nursing home." "A nursing home? Are you crazy?" "We're not crazy," Chloe said. "We're being realistic. If you don't sell voluntarily, we'll look for other ways. We can request a psychological evaluation. We can argue you're not in your right mind after Dad's death. I am perfectly sane. A doctor will determine that. And when he determines that you're depressed, unstable, incapable of making rational decisions, the judge will grant me guardianship. And then I will decide what to do with this house." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter, threatening to have me declared incompetent. My own daughter, willing to lock me in an asylum to get my house. "You can't do that." "Of course we can," the lawyer said. "I have experience in guardianship cases. It's a simple process when there's evidence the person can't care for themselves." "I can care for myself." "Appearances say otherwise," Chloe insisted. "Look at this house. It's a mess. There are dirty dishes in the sink. Dad's clothes are still in the closet. You haven't cleaned anything, you haven't cooked, you've barely gotten out of bed. I just buried my husband. And that's understandable, the lawyer said with false compassion. For that very reason, perhaps this isn't the best time for you to be making important decisions. Perhaps you need professional help. Cameron took out his phone and started taking pictures of the living room, the kitchen, the mess I had let accumulate in the last few days. What are you doing? Documenting. In case we need to prove anything later. Get out of my house. It's not your house, Chloe said. It's our house. And we have a right to be here. You have no right. We have every right. We're family. The lawyer closed his briefcase. Mrs. Eleanor, I'm going to leave you my card. Think it over. You have 1 week to decide. After that, we will begin the corresponding legal proceedings. He left the card on the table, and the three of them walked out. Chloe stopped at the door. Mom, it doesn't have to be this way. Just sign the papers. Sell the house. And we all move on with our lives. Why complicate things? Because this house is the only thing I have left of your father. Dad is gone. And clinging to this house won't bring him back. You have to learn to let go. Let go? Is that what you call robbing me? I call it being practical. I call it thinking about the future. Your future. My future. The money from this house would help us both. It would help you. It would leave me homeless. Don't be dramatic. With $120,000, you can rent a nice place for years. I don't want to rent. I want my house. Chloe sighed with exasperation. You're impossible. You've always been stubborn. That's why Dad went to work far away, to get away from you. Those words hit me harder than any insult. I felt something break inside me. Your father left to give us a better life, so you could go to college, so you could have everything. My father left because he couldn't stand living with you. He told me once when I was a teenager. He said he loved you, but you were suffocating. That's a lie. A lie? Why do you think he never came back sooner? He had chances to return, but he always found excuses. He only came back when he was old and sick, when he had no other options. Stop it, Chloe. It's the truth. And it's time you faced it. Dad didn't want to be here. And I don't want to keep coming to see you either. Give me my money, and let's stop pretending we're a happy family. We were a happy family. We were a lie. And now that Dad is gone, we don't have to keep pretending. She left, slamming the door. Cameron followed her. The lawyer gave me a pitying look before leaving, too. I stood in the middle of the living room, shaking. Chloe's words echoed in my head. Was it true? Had Arthur left to escape me? No, it couldn't be true. He loved me. He told me in every letter he sent from overseas. He told me every time we talked on the phone. He told me on his deathbed. I went up to the bedroom and pulled out the box where I kept all of Arthur's letters. Hundreds of letters written over 20 years. I read them one by one. Every letter was a declaration of love. Every word was a promise that he would return. That he missed me. That he was counting the days until we were together again. Chloe was lying. Lying to hurt me. To weaken me. To make me give up and give her what she wanted. But I wasn't going to give up. Not after everything I had fought for. Not after everything Arthur and I had built. That afternoon, I called the bank. I confirmed the status of the accounts Arthur had left. $250,000 between savings and the life insurance policy. All in my name. Mine alone. Chloe had no idea that money existed, and she wasn't going to find out. Then, I called a locksmith. I changed all the locks on the house. If Chloe wanted to come in, she would have to knock on the door, and I would decide whether or not to open it. After that, I took a long bath. I fixed my hair. I put on clean clothes. I cleaned the entire house from top to bottom. I packed Arthur's clothes in boxes, not because I wanted to forget him, but because I needed space to think, to plan. The next day, they came again. They knocked on the door insistently. I watched them from the window, but I didn't open it. "Mom, open the door," Chloe yelled. Cameron tried to use his key, but it didn't work. "Did you change the locks?" he shouted. "Are you crazy?" I opened the second-floor window. This is my house, and no one enters without my permission. Get down here right now and open this door. No, I'm going to call the police. Go ahead. Tell them you're trying to force your way into a property that isn't yours. Chloe was red with rage. This isn't over. You're going to regret this. I already regret it. I regret giving you everything. I regret spoiling you. I regret not seeing who you really were sooner. You're a bitter old woman, and you're an ungrateful daughter. Now get off my property before I call the police. They left, shouting threats, but they didn't come back that day, or the next. A week went by in silence. During that week of silence, something changed inside me. I was no longer the broken woman crying on the sofa. I was no longer the helpless widow that Chloe and Cameron thought they could manipulate. Every morning, I woke up stronger, more determined. I reviewed the documents Arthur had left me over and over, memorizing every detail, every clause, every legal protection he had put in place. My husband had been smarter than all of them combined, and now I had to live up to his legacy. I hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the best I could find. Mr. Wallace had 30 years of experience in estate and property cases. When I showed him all the documents Arthur had left, he smiled in a way that gave me hope for the first time in weeks. He explained that the house was completely protected, that it had been registered solely in my name from the moment of purchase, that Arthur had been meticulous in ensuring that no child, no relative, no person could claim a single cent of what was mine. He told me that Chloe and her cheap lawyer were blatantly lying, betting that I was ignorant enough to believe them. He told me that the threats about guardianship and psychological evaluations were intimidation tactics with no real legal standing. I felt relieved, but also furious. Furious that my own daughter had tried to take advantage of my grief and my ignorance. Mr. Wallace suggested something else. He told me to document everything, to record every conversation, every threat, every attempt at manipulation. He taught me how to use the voice recorder on my smartphone, something I had never used before. He said that people like Chloe and Cameron always ended up making mistakes, saying things they shouldn't, revealing their true intentions. I just had to be patient and wait for the right moment. I didn't have to wait long. On the 8th day, Chloe returned. This time she came alone, without Cameron, without the lawyer. She knocked on the door softly, almost shyly. When I opened it, her eyes were red as if she had been crying. She was holding a bouquet of flowers and an expression of remorse that would have convinced anyone. But I was no longer just anyone. She asked for my forgiveness between sobs. She told me she had been under a lot of stress, that her father's death had affected her more than she wanted to admit, that Cameron had pressured her to act that way because they were in serious financial trouble. She told me they had invested all their money in a business that had failed, that they owed $30,000 in credit card debt, that they were about to lose their condo. She begged me to forgive her, that she had never wanted to hurt me, that she was just desperate. She hugged me, crying, telling me that I was the only thing she had left now that Dad was gone, that she couldn't stand to lose me too. I let her talk. I let her play her role as the repentant daughter. And while she did, my phone in my pocket recorded every word, every lie, every manipulation. Because I knew this wasn't real. I knew my daughter better than she thought. I knew that behind those fake tears was a plan, a new strategy to get what she wanted. After her dramatic performance, she asked if we could have coffee and talk like mother and daughter, like we used to. I agreed. I made coffee in the kitchen while she sat at the table, drying her tears with a tissue. She talked about her childhood, about the good times we had shared, about how much she had missed her father all those years. She told me that now she understood better everything I had sacrificed for her, that now as an adult she could appreciate how hard it had been to raise her alone while Arthur was away. Her words sounded beautiful, emotional, perfectly rehearsed. Then she changed her tone. She told me she had been thinking a lot about our situation, that perhaps there was a solution that would benefit us both without having to sell the house. She proposed that I stay living here, but that I put the property in both of our names, as co-owners. That way, I would have the security of living here until the day I died, and she would have the certainty of eventually inheriting what was hers. She said it was a fair solution, that we both won, that we could avoid lawyers and fights and unnecessary expenses. She looked at me with those eyes she had used since she was a child to get what she wanted, that innocent little girl look that I had always found impossible to refuse. I told her I would think about it, that I needed time to consider her proposal. She insisted there was nothing to think about, that it was the perfect solution, that I just had to sign some very simple papers adding her name to the deed. She pulled the papers out of her purse. She already had them prepared, had already had them drawn up by a notary. All they needed was my signature. She pressured me subtly, telling me that if I really loved her, if I really wanted us to be a family again, I would sign right then and everything would be fine between us again. I looked at her steadily and told her no, that I was not going to sign anything without my own lawyer reviewing those documents first. Her expression changed instantly. The sadness vanished from her eyes, replaced by something cold and calculating. She asked me since when did I have a lawyer who had put these ideas in my head if someone was manipulating me against her. I replied that no one was manipulating me, that I had simply decided to protect what was mine, what her father had worked his whole life to give me. Chloe stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back. She told me I was making a huge mistake, that she had come with good intentions, and I was rejecting them out of distrust and bitterness. She accused me of not wanting her to be happy, of being selfish, of clinging to a house that was too big for me just out of stubbornness. She told me I wasn't going to live forever, that in a few years I'd be dead, and then what was the point of denying her now what would be hers anyway? She told me I was wasting valuable time, that we could be enjoying a good relationship, but that I preferred conflict. I asked her to leave, to take her fake papers and her crocodile tears with her, that she shouldn't come back to my house unless she was willing to treat me with the respect I deserved as her mother. She gathered her things with jerky movements, full of contained rage. Before she left, she turned and told me something I will never forget. She told me that I was alone in life because of my own impossible character, that Dad had probably died relieved not to have to put up with me anymore, that she had tried to be good to me, but that I didn't deserve her kindness. She told me that from that moment on, I should consider myself without a daughter, that I would never hear from her again, that when I was dying alone in this huge house, I shouldn't expect her to come and take care of me. She slammed the door so hard that the pictures on the wall shook. I sat in the kitchen, my hands trembling, but not from fear. I was shaking with rage. Rage because I had raised this person, had sacrificed years of my life for her, had given up so many things to give her everything, and this is how she repaid me. With lies, manipulation, threats disguised as concern. I took out my phone and stopped the recording. I had over 40 minutes of audio, 40 minutes where Chloe admitted her financial problems, where she tried to manipulate me emotionally, where she pressured me to sign documents without legal review, where she finally showed her true face, full of resentment and cruelty. I sent it immediately to Mr. Wallace. He replied an hour later, telling me it was invaluable evidence, that it clearly demonstrated the pattern of manipulation and the real intentions behind all her actions. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Chloe didn't come back, didn't call, didn't send messages. I used that time to get my life in order. I went to the bank and transferred all the money from the accounts Arthur had left into a new account solely in my name, with additional protections the manager recommended. I hired an accountant to organize my finances and explain to me exactly how much money I had and how I could manage it to live comfortably for the rest of my life. The answer surprised me pleasantly. With $250,000 well invested, I could live without worries until I was 90, even allowing for some luxuries. I also went to a real estate office, not to sell my house, but to understand what it was really worth. The agent told me that in the current market, it could sell for $350,000, not the $300,000 that Chloe's appraiser had mentioned. A $50,000 difference that my dear daughter had surely planned to pocket without me noticing. Every day I discovered a new layer of her betrayal, a new lie, a new way she had tried to steal from me. I started going out more, walking around the neighborhood, visiting the park where Arthur and I used to go on Sundays. I met other women my age, widows like me, who gathered every afternoon for coffee and conversation. They welcomed me with open arms, with similar stories of ungrateful children and complicated families. I realized I wasn't alone, that my situation wasn't unique. Many of them had been through the same thing, or worse, and they all gave me the same advice. Don't give in. Don't let them walk all over you. Protect what's yours because no one else will. One afternoon, while having coffee with my new friends in the park, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but something told me I should. It was Cameron. His voice sounded tense, feigning friendliness, with that tone salespeople use when they're trying to convince you of something you don't need. He told me we needed to talk like rational adults, that this whole situation had gotten out of control because of misunderstandings and heightened emotions. He proposed that we meet at a neutral cafe, without lawyers, without pressure, just to find a solution that worked for everyone. He assured me that Chloe was very sorry about how things had happened, that she truly loved me, but that stress had made her act in ways that didn't represent her true heart. I told him I would think about it and hung up. I immediately called Mr. Wallace to tell him. He laughed sarcastically and told me this was exactly what he expected, that people like them always try one last play before giving up or escalating the conflict. He suggested I accept the meeting but record it completely, let them talk all they wanted, and sign absolutely nothing, no matter how much they pressured me. He told me to go with someone, preferably someone who could serve as a witness if the situation got difficult. I called Cameron back and agreed to meet them. I suggested a cafe near my house, a public place where I felt safe. I arrived with Lorena, one of my new friends from the park, a 65-year-old woman who had been a lawyer before retiring and who immediately offered to accompany me when I told her my situation. She sat at a nearby table, far enough to give me privacy but close enough to intervene if something went wrong. Chloe and Cameron arrived on time. She looked different, more put together than the last time I had seen her. She was wearing an elegant dress, perfect makeup, her hair done in a sophisticated style. Cameron wore a suit and tie, as if they had come from an important business meeting. They sat across from me with cordial smiles, as if the last few nightmarish months hadn't happened. Cameron ordered coffee for all three of them without even asking me what I wanted, a small gesture of control that didn't go unnoticed. The conversation started with trivialities. They asked how I was, if I had been eating well, if I needed help with anything at the house. I answered with monosyllables, waiting for them to get to the real point of the meeting. Finally, after 15 minutes of uncomfortable theater, Cameron cleared his throat and began his prepared speech. He told me they had been reflecting a lot on the whole situation, that they realized they had handled things badly from the beginning, that the grief over Arthur's death had made them act in ways they now deeply regretted. Chloe took my hand across the table, squeezing it with an intensity that was meant to convey sincerity, but only conveyed desperation to me. She told me with a broken voice that she had been seeing a therapist, that she was working on her emotional problems, that she finally understood all the pain she had caused me. She asked for my forgiveness with tears in her eyes. Tears that seemed more real this time, but that I was no longer willing to believe. She told me she didn't want to lose me, that I was the only family she had left, that the idea of us fighting broke her heart every night. Cameron continued, explaining that they had consulted with several lawyers and that all of them had told them the same thing. My legal position was solid, the house was completely mine, and they had no claim on it. He told me they accepted that reality and were no longer going to fight for the property. He assured me they had come in peace, with a completely different proposal that didn't involve selling the house or changing any ownership documents. He asked me to listen with an open mind, to consider their offer before rejecting it automatically. The proposal was simple on the surface, but twisted in its essence. They wanted me to lend them $100,000. They explained that they had found an incredible investment opportunity, a business that would give them guaranteed returns in 2 years. They promised to pay me back the $100,000 plus $30,000 in interest, a substantial profit for me. They told me it was a way for me to help them without risking my house, a way to show that we were still family, that we still trusted each other. They assured me they had everything documented, that we would sign legal contracts with a notary, that I would be completely protected. I asked them where they got the idea that I had $100,000 to lend them. Cameron smiled with that condescending smirk I hated so much and told me they knew Arthur had been a prudent man, that he had surely left me savings in addition to the house. Chloe added that it wasn't necessary for me to tell them exactly how much money I had, that they just needed that amount to save their financial situation and start over. She begged me to help them, to remember all the times she had needed me as a child, and I had always been there for her. I took a sip of my coffee, which was now cold, and let them continue their rehearsed speech. Cameron pulled out a folder with papers, contracts already prepared, stipulating the terms of the loan. He showed me financial projections of the supposed business, colorful graphs promising exponential profits. He spoke of important partners, of unique opportunities that only come once in a lifetime. Chloe supplemented each of her husband's arguments with emotional pleas, with promises that this time would be different, that they would use the money wisely, that they could finally stabilize themselves and stop worrying me. I told them I needed time to think about it, that $100,000 was a lot of money, that I couldn't make such an important decision in one afternoon over coffee. Cameron insisted that the investment opportunity had a deadline, that they needed the money in less than a week or they would lose the chance forever. Chloe pressured me, saying that if I really loved them, if I really wanted to help them, I wouldn't hesitate for a second. She reminded me of everything she had done for me, although when I asked her to specify exactly what she had done, she fell silent. I asked them what would happen if the business failed, if they lost all the money and couldn't pay me back. Cameron assured me that was impossible, that the business was practically foolproof, that they had guarantees and backers. But when I asked him to show me these supposed backers, he started to get nervous, to talk faster, to give increasingly vague explanations. Chloe intervened, saying I was being too suspicious, that it was sad I couldn't trust my own daughter, that this distrust was exactly what was destroying our relationship. I told them clearly that I was not going to lend them any money, that I had worked very hard with Arthur to save every penny, that this money was my security for the future, that I was not going to risk it on businesses I didn't understand with people who had repeatedly proven they were untrustworthy. Chloe's expression changed instantly. The mask of the repentant daughter fell, and the cold, calculating woman who had tried to steal my house reappeared. She told me I was selfish, that I had more money than I would need for the rest of my life, and yet I refused to help my own daughter. She accused me of bringing her into the world only to abandon her emotionally, of raising her without true love, of always putting Arthur before her. She told me that all the money I had should be hers, because she had suffered a childhood without a father, because of the decisions Arthur and I had made. She blamed me for her current financial situation, saying that if I had taught her better values, instead of spoiling her so much, she wouldn't be in this desperate position. Cameron joined the attack. He told me I was making a mistake I would regret, that they had come with good intentions, but I was rejecting them out of spite. He subtly threatened me, saying that elderly people living alone are vulnerable, that many bad things can happen, that it would be a shame if something happened to me and all that money I was hoarding ended up in the government's hands instead of with my own family. I stood up. I told them this conversation was over, that I was leaving before they said something they would truly regret. Chloe also stood up, getting too close to me, invading my space aggressively. She told me in a low, venomous voice that I was going to die alone and bitter, that when I was on my deathbed, there would be no one holding my hand, that my last thought would be regret for having destroyed the relationship with my only daughter over money. Lorena approached at that moment, placing herself between Chloe and me. She told my daughter in a firm voice to take a step back, to stop harassing her mother, that her behavior was unacceptable. Chloe looked at her with contempt and asked who the hell she was to meddle in family matters. Lorena identified herself as my lawyer, a small lie she told with such authority that Chloe and Cameron were momentarily speechless. She informed them that the entire conversation had been recorded, that their threats had been documented, that if they continued to harass me, we would take immediate legal action. Cameron tried to downplay it, saying they hadn't threatened anyone, that it was just a conversation between family. Lorena took out her phone and started playing the recording, specifically the part where Cameron mentioned that bad things could happen to me living alone. Cameron's face went pale as he heard his own words played back aloud in the middle of the cafe, with other people turning to see what was happening. We left the cafe, leaving them sitting there with their useless contracts and shattered plans. Lorena walked me home while I tried to calm the shaking in my hands. It wasn't fear I felt, but a strange mixture of liberation and deep sadness. Liberation because I had finally seen with total clarity who my daughter really was, without any veil of hope or denial. Sadness because a part of me still remembered the little girl who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world. That little girl no longer existed, if she ever truly had. Lorena stayed with me that afternoon. We made tea and sat in the living room while she reviewed all the recordings I had collected over the past few weeks. She explained that I had more than enough evidence to get a restraining order if I wanted, that Cameron's veiled threats, along with the documented pattern of harassment, were grounds enough for legal action. She asked if I wanted to proceed with that, or if I preferred to wait and see what they did next. I told her I wanted to wait, that I still had a small hope they would stop bothering me on their own, although we both knew that was unlikely. Over the next few days, I focused on strengthening my position. I hired a security company to install cameras around my house at the entrance, in the yard, at the back door. If Chloe or Cameron tried anything, it would be recorded. I also updated my will with Mr. Wallace, making it very clear where my estate would go when I died. I decided that a significant portion would go to charities that helped elderly women in situations of family abuse. Chloe would receive exactly $1, the legal minimum to show that I had not forgotten her, but had consciously decided to disinherit her. 2 more weeks passed with no word from them. I started to believe they had finally gotten the message that they had given up. How naive I was. One afternoon, as I was returning from the grocery store, I found Cameron waiting for me at my front door. He was alone, without Chloe. His appearance was different from our last meeting. He looked tired, disheveled, with deep dark circles under his eyes and several days' worth of stubble. He blocked my path as I tried to pass, but kept his hands in his pockets in an attempt to appear non-threatening. He told me he needed to talk to me urgently, that Chloe didn't know he was here, that this was just between us. I replied that I had nothing to talk to him about, that he needed to get out of my way or I would call the police. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender and took a step back, but he didn't leave. He begged me to give him just 5 minutes, that he owed me the truth about everything that had been happening. Something in his voice, a genuine desperation I hadn't heard before, made me hesitate. I agreed to hear him out, but warned him that I had my phone in my hand, ready to dial 911 if he tried anything. What he told me left me cold. He said that everything had been his idea from the beginning, that Chloe hadn't wanted to do any of it at first, but that he had convinced her, manipulated her, pressured her. He explained that they had debts far worse than they had told me, not $30,000, but closer to $120,000 between loans, credit cards, and money owed to dangerous people. He told me he had made stupid investments without consulting Chloe, that he had lost all their money in schemes that turned out to be scams. He said that when Arthur died, he saw an opportunity to get out of their financial hole and started filling Chloe's head with ideas about the inheritance she supposedly deserved. He confessed that the lawyer they had brought to my house was a friend of his, not a real lawyer. That the documents they had shown me were fake, designed to scare me and make me think I had no options. He told me he knew I had money from Arthur, that he had discreetly looked through some papers once when he was in my house and saw bank statements. He admitted that the supposed business he had told me about in the cafe didn't exist, that they just wanted the money to pay off their most urgent debts. He begged me to forgive him, that he was a weak man who had made terrible decisions out of panic. I asked him why he was telling me all this now, what he hoped to gain from this late confession. Cameron looked down, unable to meet my gaze. He told me the creditors were no longer willing to wait, that they had given him a 2-week ultimatum, or they would take severe measures. He said Chloe had finally discovered the full truth about his secret debts and was considering leaving him. He said that if she left him, he would lose everything, that she was the only good thing in his life and he couldn't bear the thought of losing her because of his own stupidity. He asked me, with real tears rolling down his cheeks, to lend the money directly to him, without Chloe finding out. He promised he would pay me back every cent, that he would get a second job, a third job if necessary, that he would dedicate the rest of his life to paying me back. He pleaded with me to think of Chloe, that if I truly loved her, I wouldn't let her marriage be destroyed because of the debts he had created. He told me that if I helped him now, he would make sure Chloe never bothered me again, that he would convince her to leave me alone, to respect my decisions. I looked at him in silence for a long moment. Part of me felt sorry for this broken man in front of me, This man who had dug his own financial grave and was now desperate to get out. But a larger part of me, the part that had matured and strengthened during these weeks of conflict, only felt contempt. I told him no, that I would not give him a single cent, that his problems were the consequence of his own actions and that he would have to face them like an adult. I told him that he had dragged my daughter into this mess, that he had turned his greed into the engine that destroyed our relationship. I told him I didn't care if Chloe left him or not, that that was her decision, but I was not going to rescue him from the consequences of his lies. I warned him that if he ever came near me again, if he tried to contact me in any way, I would hand over all the recordings I had to the police and report him for harassment, threats, and fraud. Cameron completely fell apart. He knelt on my doorstep, begging, crying uncontrollably, grabbing my arm in desperation. He pleaded with me over and over to reconsider, not to let him sink, to think of my own daughter who would suffer the consequences. I had to seriously threaten to call the police before he finally let go of me and walked away. I watched him go, shoulders slumped, defeated, destroyed. I went into my house and locked the door. I dropped the grocery bags on the floor and sat on the stairs. I didn't cry. I had no more tears left for this situation. I just sat there, breathing deeply, processing everything I had just heard. If what Cameron told me was true, then Chloe had been manipulated to some extent. But that didn't excuse her completely. She had chosen to believe him over me. She had chosen to threaten me, to insult me, to try to strip me of my home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, thinking about everything Cameron had confessed, wondering how much was true and how much was just another desperate manipulation. At 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang. It was Chloe. Her voice sounded different, broken, vulnerable in a way I hadn't heard in years. She told me Cameron had come home drunk, crying, confessing everything he had told me and more. She told me she hadn't known about the real debts until 2 days ago, that Cameron had been lying to her for months about the severity of their financial situation. She told me she felt betrayed, used, manipulated by the man she had trusted blindly. She apologized with a sincerity that cut through all my defenses. She explained that at first she truly believed she was entitled to part of the inheritance, that Cameron had convinced her I was being selfish by keeping everything. She told me that every time she hesitated or wanted to back down, he pressured her, telling her I had more than enough money and that it was my duty as a mother to help her. She said that when she finally discovered the full truth about the debts and the lies, she realized she had destroyed our relationship for a man who wasn't worth it. I asked her what she expected from me now, after all the damage she had caused. Chloe was silent for a long moment before answering. She told me she expected nothing, that she wasn't asking me for money or help or even forgiveness. She just wanted me to know that she finally understood what she had done, that she had been blind, and that she now saw clearly the monster she had become. She told me she was going to leave Cameron, that she had already spoken to a divorce lawyer, that she didn't want to spend another day with someone who had used her to try to steal from her own mother. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to run to her and hold her like when she was a little girl and had nightmares. But the stronger part of me, the one that had learned to protect itself during these terrible months, held firm. I told her I was glad she had opened her eyes about Cameron, but that it didn't erase everything she had said and done. I reminded her of every insult, every threat, every moment of cruelty. I told her she couldn't just blame everything on Cameron when she had been an active participant every step of the way. Chloe started to cry. She begged me to give her a chance to prove herself, to let her rebuild our relationship little by little. She promised she would never ask me for money again, that she would never question my decisions, that she just wanted her mother back. She told me she was alone, scared, unsure of what to do with her life. She reminded me that she was my only daughter, that despite everything, we were still family, that blood couldn't be erased. I told her I needed time, that I couldn't make decisions about our relationship in the middle of the night after months of war, that if she truly wanted to change, she would have to prove it with actions, not with words spoken in a moment of desperation. I suggested she seek professional help, that she work on her own problems before trying to fix ours. I told her I would contact her when I was ready, if I was ever ready. Chloe accepted between sobs. She told me she understood, that she would respect my space, that she would wait as long as it took. We hung up, and I stared at the phone in the darkness of my room. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or more confused. I had spent weeks building walls around my heart, convincing myself my daughter was lost to me. And now, with one phone call, those walls had cracked. The following days were strange. Chloe didn't contact me, respecting the space I had asked for. Cameron didn't show up either. Through Lorena, who had connections in various social circles, I found out that Chloe had indeed filed for divorce. I also learned that Cameron had had to declare bankruptcy, that he had lost his job after his financial troubles became public. Part of me felt a dark satisfaction in knowing he was finally facing the consequences of his actions. A month passed. Then, too, I continued with my life, enjoying my house, my independence, my new friendships. I took a trip to the beach for a week, something Arthur and I had always wanted to do but never had the time. I took painting classes at the community center. I started volunteering at a shelter for women victims of domestic violence, sharing my story to help others who were going through difficult situations with their families. One afternoon, returning from the shelter, I found an envelope in my mailbox. It had no return address, just my name written in Chloe's handwriting. Inside was a long, handwritten letter. I read it sitting on my porch, with the afternoon sun warming my face. Chloe told me how she had been, the progress she was making in therapy, the things she was learning about herself. She talked about her job, about how she was rebuilding her life step by step. She didn't ask me for anything. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She just shared her process with me, letting me decide if I wanted to be a part of it or not. At the end of the letter, there was a brief note that said, "Dad would have told me to fix this, that I shouldn't let pride destroy the only thing that really matters. I'm trying, Mom. In my own way, I'm trying." I folded the letter and put it in my sweater pocket. I wasn't ready to answer yet. Maybe I never would be. But for the first time in months, I felt something other than anger or pain when I thought about my daughter. I felt a tiny spark of something that could, if I let it, become hope. 3 more months passed before I decided to answer Chloe's letter. During that time, I received 2 more letters, each with the same reflective, humble tone, without demands or manipulations. She simply told me about her life, her progress in therapy, the lessons she was learning about responsibility and consequences. In the 3rd letter, she confessed something that broke my heart in a different way. She told me her therapist had helped her remember things from her childhood that she had blocked out, moments when I had truly been there for her in ways she had forgotten or minimized. She wrote about the time I stayed up all night with her when she had pneumonia at 7 years old, about how I worked 2 jobs for a year to pay for the graduation trip she wanted so badly, about the countless times I had sacrificed my own needs for hers. I decided it was time to take the first step toward a possible reconciliation, but I would do it my way and on my terms. I sent her a short letter, inviting her to get coffee in a public place, the same park where I met my friends. I made it clear that this didn't mean everything was forgiven, that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult conversation. I told her that if she truly wanted to rebuild our relationship, she would have to be patient and accept that things would never be the same as before. On the day of the meeting, I arrived half an hour early. I needed to sit, breathe, and mentally prepare myself to see my daughter after so long. When I finally saw her walking toward me, I almost didn't recognize her. She had lost weight, not the healthy kind, but the kind that comes from constant stress and worry. Her clothes were simpler, without the expensive brands she used to wear. Her face looked tired, but there was something different in her eyes, a clarity I hadn't seen before. She sat across from me without trying to hug me, respecting the physical and emotional space I needed. She thanked me for agreeing to see her, told me she didn't take this opportunity for granted. For the first hour, we just talked about superficial things, testing the waters, getting used to each other's presence again. She told me she had gotten a modest job at a bookstore, that she was living in a small apartment she could barely afford, that she had sold almost all her luxury possessions to cover some of the debts Cameron had left in her name. Eventually, the conversation turned deeper. I asked her directly what had truly changed, why I should believe this time was different. Chloe didn't try to give me easy answers or empty promises. She told me with brutal honesty that she couldn't guarantee she would never disappoint me again, that she was an imperfect human being working on her problems. She explained that therapy had shown her behavioral patterns she had been carrying since adolescence, a tendency to blame others for her failures, an inability to accept responsibility for her actions. She confessed that she had been spoiled, that I and Arthur had given her too much without teaching her the real value of things. I told her she was right, in part, that Arthur and I had made mistakes as parents, especially me during those 20 years I raised her alone. I told her how I had tried to compensate for her father's absence by giving her every material thing she asked for, believing it would fill the void. I explained that my biggest mistake wasn't giving her too much, but not teaching her to value it, not showing her that behind every gift there was sacrifice, work, and love. I told her I had failed to prepare her for the real difficulties of life because I myself was so busy surviving that I didn't have time to teach her how. Chloe cried then, not the manipulative tears she had used before, but genuine tears of pain and regret. She told me she finally understood how much I had sacrificed, how much everything she had received with indifference had cost me. She told me her therapist had asked her to make a list of all the sacrifices I had made for her throughout her life, and that when she finished the list, she had 11 handwritten pages. She said reading that list was like waking up from a 35-year-long selfish dream. I asked her about Cameron, about how that relationship had finally ended. Chloe took a deep breath before telling me. She explained that the divorce process had been brutal, that Cameron had tried to blame her for everything, that he had spread lies about her among their mutual friends. She told me she had lost almost all her friendships because people had believed Cameron's version over hers. She confessed that there were moments when she considered going back to him simply because being alone was too hard, but that her therapist had helped her stay strong. I then told her about the confession Cameron had made to me months ago, about how he had come to beg me for money. Chloe covered her face with her hands in shame. She told me Cameron had told her a completely different version of that encounter, that he had said I had insulted and threatened him for no reason. She thanked me for telling her the truth, for not protecting her from the reality of who she had been married to. She said that was exactly what she needed, raw honesty instead of comforting lies. We talked for 3 hours that day. At the end, before we said goodbye, Chloe asked if I could ever forgive her completely. I answered honestly that I didn't know, that forgiveness wasn't something I could force or rush. I told her that what she had done to me had left deep scars, that there were moments when I still felt the pain of her words as if I had just heard them. I explained that forgiveness was a process, not a single event, and that it would require time, patience, and consistent actions on her part. Chloe accepted this without protest. She asked if we could meet again, if we could try to build something new, even if it was different from what we had before. I told her yes, we could try, but I set clear boundaries. We would meet once a month to start, always in public places, always with the understanding that any mention of money or financial favors would immediately end our relationship. Chloe agreed to all my terms without argument. Over the following months, we kept that rhythm. Once a month, we met in the park or at a cafe. The conversations gradually became easier, more natural. Chloe never missed a meeting, never showed up late, never tried to manipulate the conversations into uncomfortable territory. She told me about her progress in therapy, about the books she was reading at the bookstore where she worked, about how she was learning to live with less and discovering she was happier this way. I told her about my painting classes, my volunteer work at the shelter, my new friendships. I showed her pictures from the beach trip I had taken, of the paintings I had created, of the full life I was building without her. I think seeing me happy and independent was important for Chloe. It showed her that I didn't need her to be complete, that I had learned to flourish on my own, and strangely, that seemed to make her respect our relationship more. One day, almost 6 months after our first coffee, Chloe surprised me with something unexpected. She handed me an envelope and asked me to open it. Inside was a check for $5,000. I stared at it, confused, not understanding what it meant. Chloe explained that she had been saving every penny she could from her modest salary, that she had worked extra shifts at the bookstore, that she had taken on additional transcription jobs at night. She told me that money was to start paying me back, not for the money I never lent her, but for all the years I had invested in her without expecting anything in return. I told her I couldn't accept it, that she needed that money more than I did. Chloe insisted with a determination that reminded me of the stubborn child she once was, but this time used for something positive. She explained that accepting the money was important for her, that it was part of her healing process, a way to show with actions and not just words that she had changed. She begged me to take it, to allow her to feel like she was doing something real to repair the damage. I took the check with trembling hands. I told her I would accept it on one condition, that I would deposit it into a separate savings account, and that when she truly needed help in the future, for something important and legitimate, that money would be there for her. Chloe protested, saying that wasn't the point, but she finally agreed to my terms. We hugged for the first time in almost a year, and in that hug, I felt something I thought was lost forever. I felt my daughter. Things improved gradually over the next year. Our monthly meetings became bi-weekly, then weekly. Chloe continued to work hard, staying away from any situation that might lead her back to her old patterns. She told me she had turned down offers from men who wanted to date her because her therapist had recommended she focus on healing completely before getting involved in a new relationship. I was impressed by her discipline, her real commitment to changing her life. One day, I received an unexpected call from Mr. Wallace. He informed me that Cameron had tried to sue me, alleging that I had interfered in his marriage and caused his divorce with malicious intent. The lawyer explained that the lawsuit was completely absurd, with no legal basis, and would likely be dismissed immediately. But I still had to formally respond and appear before a judge for a preliminary hearing. He assured me there was nothing to worry about, that we had all the recordings and documented evidence of his threatening behavior. I told Chloe about the lawsuit at our next meeting. I expected her to get upset, to become defensive about her ex-husband. Instead, she became furious in a way that pleasantly surprised me. She told me she would testify on my behalf if necessary, that she would tell the whole truth about how Cameron had manipulated her to attack me, about all the lies he had built. She offered to give Mr. Wallace documents she had saved emails and text messages where Cameron specifically planned how to manipulate her to get money from me. The hearing was 3 weeks later. Chloe showed up that day without my asking, dressed professionally, with a folder full of organized documents. When Cameron saw her in the courtroom sitting next to me, his face went pale. His own lawyer, a cheap type who had clearly taken the case without proper investigation, looked increasingly uncomfortable as the hearing unfolded. Mr. Wallace presented all our evidence meticulously and devastatingly. The recordings of the threats, the extortion attempts, the lies about fake documents. When it was Chloe's turn to testify, she didn't hesitate for a second. She recounted in a firm, clear voice how Cameron had manipulated her, how he had lied to her about the real state of their finances, how he had constantly pressured her to attack me. She described specific conversations where he planned intimidation tactics, where he designed scenarios to make me feel vulnerable and scared. Cameron tried to interrupt her several times, shouting that she was lying, that she had taken my side for money. The judge silenced him curtly and warned him that another outburst would result in contempt charges. When Cameron finally had the chance to speak in his own defense, he contradicted himself multiple times, changed his story, and tried to blame everyone but himself. It was painful to watch, seeing a man completely destroy himself in front of a full room. The judge didn't take 5 minutes to dismiss the lawsuit completely, but he went further. He warned Cameron that filing frivolous lawsuits with malicious intent was a serious matter, that he could face sanctions if he continued to harass me legally. He ordered him to stay away from me and Chloe, forbidding him from contacting us in any way. Cameron slouched out of the courtroom, completely defeated, his last attempt to get something from our family publicly crushed. After the hearing, Chloe and I went to lunch. For the first time in over a year, I invited her to my house. It was a significant moment for both of us. She hadn't been in this house since the day she had screamed at me to consider myself without a daughter. When we walked in, she stood in the living room, looking around with tears in her eyes. She told me she remembered every corner, every piece of furniture, all the Sundays she had spent here with her father before he got sick. She confessed that during the darkest months of her conflict with me, she had dreamed repeatedly of this house, of the happy memories she had tried to destroy out of greed. I showed her the photographs I had recently framed, pictures from her childhood that I had found while organizing Arthur's things. Photos of her at 5 years old playing in the yard, at 10 in her first communion with that white dress she had loved so much, at 15 at her high school graduation with Arthur and me on either side, smiling proudly. Chloe touched each frame with reverence, as if reconnecting with a version of herself she had forgotten existed. She asked if she could ever be part of this house again, not as an owner, but simply as a daughter visiting her mother. I told her yes, she could come whenever she wanted, as long as she respected that this was my space, my sanctuary. I explained that I had worked hard to turn this house into a place of peace after all the conflict, that I would not tolerate drama or negativity within these walls. Chloe accepted my terms without argument, grateful simply for the opportunity. Over the following months, Chloe began to visit me regularly. At first, just for coffee on Sunday afternoons, then to help me with the garden I had neglected, eventually to cook together the recipes Arthur used to love. It was strange and beautiful at the same time, building a new relationship on the rubble of the old one. It wasn't the traditional mother-daughter relationship we had before. It was something different, more honest, more balanced. One afternoon, while we were making the tomato sauce Arthur always asked for, Chloe asked me a question I had been avoiding. She asked if I had changed my will, if she was still disinherited. I answered her honestly that yes, my current will left most of my estate to charities, with a small portion reserved for her. I explained that it wasn't a punishment but a protection, a way to ensure that if something happened to me, she wouldn't be overwhelmed by money that could lead her back to old patterns. Chloe didn't get upset as I half expected. Instead, she told me she thought it was fair, that she understood my reasoning. She confessed that her therapist had helped her understand that a large part of her problems came from never having to truly work for anything, from always having a safety net that protected her from consequences. She told me she preferred to earn my trust back slowly, with consistent actions over years if necessary, than to receive a large inheritance she had done nothing to deserve. I then told her about the savings account where I had deposited her $5,000 check, which had grown to almost $8,000 with interest and some additional contributions I had made. I explained that this account was hers, that she could access it when she truly needed it. Chloe was surprised and asked me why I had been adding money to her account. I told her simply that it was because she had shown for over a year that she was committed to her change, that she had earned my trust back gradually, and that I wanted to support that progress. We cried together that afternoon in the kitchen. They weren't tears of sadness, but of relief, of healing, of a connection we had thought was lost forever, but was slowly being reborn. Chloe hugged me and whispered that she was sorry for every single day of the past year, for every hurtful word she had said, for every moment she had chosen money over our relationship. She told me she would spend the rest of her life showing me that she was worth this second chance. I told her she was already doing it, that every Sunday she showed up, every time she respected my boundaries, every wise decision she made about her own life, she was already proving it. I reminded her that real change doesn't happen overnight, that it's a continuous process of right decisions repeated over and over until it becomes nature. I told her I was proud of her, something I hadn't been able to say honestly in years. That night, after Chloe left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, looking at the stars. I thought about Arthur, about how he would have handled this whole situation, probably with more patience than me, with his calm nature and his ability to see the best in people. But I also knew he would be proud of how I had defended myself, of how I had not allowed myself to be stripped of my dignity or my home. I spoke aloud to the stars, telling him about the hearing, about the slow reconciliation with Chloe, about how his legacy wasn't just the house, but the strength he had given me to protect it. 2 years have passed since Arthur's funeral. 2 years since my daughter tried to steal my house and my dignity. 2 years of pain, learning, loss, and rebirth. This house that Arthur bought for our old age has become something more than he imagined. It's not just a refuge for me. It has transformed into a symbol of resilience, of the strength I didn't know I had until I was forced to find it. Chloe still comes every Sunday without fail. 6 months ago, she got a promotion at the bookstore. She's now the branch manager. She tells me with pride about the employees she supervises, about the decisions she makes, about how she's building a real career based on her own effort. She has saved enough money to move into a better apartment, one with an extra bedroom she decorated thinking that I could stay when I visit. I haven't slept there yet, but I appreciate the way she is building a space where I am welcome. Her relationship with money has completely changed. It surprises me when she goes out with discount coupons, when she looks for sales, when she thinks twice before making a purchase. She told me recently that every time she feels the temptation to spend money she doesn't need to spend, she asks herself how many hours she would have to work to earn it back. She said that perspective changed everything for her, that she finally understands the real value of money because now she earns it with her own sweat. I have changed too. The fragile, broken woman who cried on this sofa 2 years ago no longer exists. I have discovered a version of myself I never knew during my marriage, an independent woman who can make tough decisions, who can defend her boundaries without guilt, who can build a full life without depending emotionally on anyone. I love this version of myself in a way I never thought possible. My volunteer work at the shelter has expanded. I now coordinate an entire program for elderly women facing financial abuse from their families. I share my story openly, without shame, because I've learned that my experience can help others. I've seen dozens of women find their own strength after hearing how I found mine. Every time one of them hugs me, crying, and thanks me for giving them the courage to defend themselves, I feel that everything I went through had a greater purpose. Lorena is still my best friend. We see each other almost every day. We have tea in my garden or walk in the park. She introduced me to her son Daniel a year ago, a 70-year-old man, a widower like me. We've gone out to dinner a few times. We go to the movies occasionally. We share long conversations about our lives. It's not romance, at least not yet, but it's pleasant companionship. Arthur always told me that if anything happened to him, he didn't want me to be alone and bitter for the rest of my life. I think he would be happy to know that I'm open to new connections, new possibilities. Last month, I did something I never imagined doing. I called Chloe and asked her to come to the house for an important conversation. When she arrived, she looked nervous, as if she thought she had done something wrong and I was going to push her away again. I sat her down in the living room and showed her documents I had prepared with Mr. Wallace. I had updated my will again. Now, Chloe will inherit this house when I die, along with half of my savings. The other half will still go to the charities that mean so much to me. Chloe sat in silence, looking at the papers for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was trembling. She asked me why, after everything that had happened, I was willing to leave her so much. I explained that for these past 2 years, she had shown genuine and sustained change, that she had proven that money no longer controlled her, that she had learned to value relationships above possessions. I told her I trusted that if this house ever became hers, she would care for it with the respect it deserves, that she would honor her father's memory within these walls. I made it clear that this didn't erase the past, that the scars of what she did would always be there in some way. But I also told her that I had learned something important during these years of conflict and reconciliation. I had learned that people can change if they truly want to, that genuine repentance is shown through consistent actions over time, that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting but choosing not to let the past poison the future. Chloe cried, hugging me. She thanked me not just for the inheritance, but for the second chance, for not giving up on her even when it would have been easier to cut all ties permanently. She promised me she would never forget the lessons learned during these difficult years, that if this house one day became hers, she would turn it into a place where other women could find refuge and strength, just as I did. A week ago, we held a small ceremony in the garden. We planted a rose bush in memory of Arthur, a yellow one, which was his favorite color. I invited my friends from the park, Lorena and her son Daniel, and some of the women from the shelter who have become important in my life. Chloe prepared the food, using the recipes of Arthur's that we had been cooking together for months. It was a beautiful afternoon filled with laughter, stories, and genuine human connection. As I watched Chloe serving food and talking kindly with my friends, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt real hope for our future together. Not the naive hope I had before, when I believed family love was unconditional and eternal no matter what, but a more mature, more realistic hope, based on concrete evidence of change and growth. That night, after everyone had left, Chloe stayed to help me clean up. We worked together in comfortable silence, washing dishes, putting away chairs, sweeping the garden. Before she left, she stopped at the door and looked at me with an expression that was a mixture of gratitude and determination. She told me she knew she could never fully repay everything she had taken from me during those horrible months, that some wounds were too deep to heal completely. But she promised me she would spend the rest of her life trying, being the daughter I always deserved to have. I told her something I had been thinking for weeks. I told her I didn't need her to spend her life making it up to me, that wasn't a healthy way to live for either of us. What I needed was for her to be the best version of herself, to take the lessons learned and use them to build a life she could be genuinely proud of. I told her that would be the best gift she could ever give me, seeing her flourish into the person she was meant to be. Now, as I write this, sitting on my porch on a quiet afternoon, I look at this house that I almost lost, this home that Arthur built for us with so much love and sacrifice. The walls have witnessed so much pain and so much healing. The garden where the yellow rose bush now grows has seen tears of betrayal and tears of reconciliation. This house is more than wood and cement. It is a living testament to resilience, to the human capacity to survive betrayal and find a way back to love. I regret nothing. I don't regret defending what was mine with all the ferocity I found inside me. I don't regret setting firm boundaries, even when it meant pushing my own daughter away. I don't regret taking the time I needed to heal before opening my heart again. And I definitely don't regret giving a second chance when that chance was genuinely earned. The most important lesson I learned is this: kindness and love should not be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. Loving someone does not mean letting them destroy you. Being a mother does not mean sacrificing your dignity on the altar of family affection. Healthy relationships require mutual respect, clear boundaries, and the willingness of both parties to work to maintain them. Arthur left me this house as a refuge, but he left me something even more valuable. He left me the final lesson I needed to learn. He taught me through his absence that I was stronger than I thought, more capable than I imagined, more complete than I thought possible. He showed me that the true legacy isn't the material things we leave behind, but the strength we inspire in others to defend themselves and value themselves. This house will stand as a symbol of that lesson, and when my time finally comes to leave, when this house passes into Chloe's hands, I trust that she will care for it not just as property, but as the monument it is. A monument to the love that survives betrayal. A monument to the family that can be rebuilt on more honest foundations. A monument to the women who refuse to be victims of circumstance or the people who betray them. I look to the future now without fear. I have built a life that fulfills me, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not for what I can give them. I have found purpose in helping other women find their own strength, and I have regained a relationship with my daughter that, while different from what it was, is more authentic and stronger, precisely because it survived its own destruction. The sun is setting over my garden. The yellow rosebush sways gently in the breeze. Somewhere within these walls, I feel Arthur's presence, smiling, proud of the woman I became after he was gone. I whisper to the wind, "We did it, my love. I protected our home. I protected our dignity, and I found my way back to our daughter. Rest in peace, knowing your legacy is safe."